And hello, everybody. Hope this volume's okay. Been a while since I've done an OBS stream, but hello everyone, and welcome back to ERO. This time, it is now season 12. Second time I'm here, of course, season 11. I took over. Now we're here for season 12. Really looking forward to seeing how this season ends up going. So, I don't want to spend much time because I've learnt from last season. Okay, so I'm getting told louder. My audio is quiet, no problem. I can change that right now. How does this sound? Maybe this? If I speak a bit louder, maybe? Potentially? I've got a PC to the side here, by the way, that's why I'm trying to sort this. We'll see how that goes. Bear with me 1 second. Let me just check to see if this is all connected to the right thing. It is. So, this should be fine. Maybe I'll just talk a bit louder. That might sort it. Even Boyman's here. Boyman, how are you? Because I haven't heard you in months, although I've literally seen you traveling the world on Instagram. Oh, that's funny. So hello to the 43 people who are here. Before anything, I'm gonna say don't forget to like the stream. Um, so hello to the 43 people who are here. So I'm not gonna waste any time. We're basically gonna jump right into this somewhat. So of course with this season, we of course have our calendar. Our calendar was voted by the public, so basically everyone in ERO, then the ERO donators who have generously donated to ERO this season to help with like our future development in a way. Then ERO admins selected a few, and the last one was. Oh yeah, the champions from season 11 each got to pick a track each. So there was the 5 champions, of course, because we had 5 tiers last season. That's 5. The admins picked 3. The public picked 2, and the donators picked 2. And that adds up to the 12 tracks, which is these 12 tracks. Of course, this has already been revealed previously, which now means the stream will be a lot less longer because, of course, last time we done the calendar reveal on stream as well. Now, with this season, of course, we have the special events, and I personally love the idea of these special events. With us having 4 different types of special events. Special event 1 is our Mystery Grand Prix, which is happening in round 2, round 6, and round 11. So basically, it can be any other track apart from the ones which are on the calendar, of course. Which means, yes, you might need to save setups for every single track, but that's the fun in the game now because basically quite a few people, just aren't practicing at all. So then why not have it nobody practices and we just throw them into a race and see how they cope, kind of thing. So, and then the special event 2 is it says down in the bottom left, which is Hungary, which is a full quali and then a 25% race. Well, after the public has spoken, plus also the admins and have had a discussion, that format will be changing to full quali and 35% race. So we will be having a longer race now, as quite a few people seemed to not like the idea of a 25% race. So that will be getting changed. So Hungary round 4 will be full qualifying followed by a 35% race format. Special event 3, which is happening in Austria in round 7, is going to be a one-shot quali followed by a 50% sprint and then a 50% race. There's only just a point for the pole position in the qualifying, and then of course there's sprint points and race points, which will be very interesting to see. And lastly, My personal favourite, round 10 at Brazil, is Special Event 4, which is a 50% sprint, 50% race, but in reverse championship order. I personally love this one because it's going to cause so much carnage, which is why we had to select such a good track in Brazil for this event, because the champions are going to be starting at the back and have sprint and race to get back up to the top of the grid. But then also with that format, we're offering more points than any other race. That's something maybe which nobody has saw. These special events have more points available compared to the other rounds. So Hungary, Austria, and Brazil are the races you want to be making because there are more points than usual on offer. This can all be found, of course, within our Discord, and then if you scroll up to F1 information, you can then see the point system channel, and that is where you can find out all the point system, all the different points which you can get in these different race formats. But uh, it's time. Uh, I saw someone said put some background music. I did have music, but the music file has randomly been deleted from my laptop. So yeah, I don't have. There should have been music in the intro like there was last season, but it's not there anymore. But without further ado, hello to the 56 people we have in this stream. That is great. I'm just reading through the chat. Do 100% race. All-star race win, full practice, full qualifying, full sprint, and full race. 100% win. We were thinking about doing a 100% race, but we kind of thought most. I mean, like, although it's like a big thing which people would want, it's the matter of actually running it, and those people which will complain for doing a whole entire race to then have an incident at the end of the race which completely destroys their race. Like, racing for like an hour and a half or 2 hours to then be destroyed at the end of the race. Maybe next season, on season 13, which will be on F1 24, maybe, we will see. But let's just see in the chat, who is ready is the question. Because it is now time to find out the grids for season 12. If nobody knows, I'm happy to announce that we have 5 tiers again for this season in season 12. Quite a good number, we would say, especially considering that we were struggling at the end of last season. We realistically only had 3 running tiers, so to be back at 5 tiers for this upcoming season is great. Of course, our prizes is larger than ever. Last season in season 11, we had €280. This season, we have €1,000, which is massive. I believe around €650 of that is in F1, followed by about then 175 in both F2 and F3. The prizes can be found within the Discord as well. I don't have anything on here to reveal them because they've already been revealed. That was one of our big promotional methods, was money. But yeah, without further ado, Ziku, hi Tib, how are you? Right, so this is it. Sorry to the 61 people for holding you up. It's now time to get into the grids. So, it is the same graphic as last season. Unfortunately, I was wanting a new graphic made, but we are sticking with this one, which, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory and it's very nice. Of course, for next season, when we go into F1 24, this of course will be changed because of course we now see Racing Bulls and Kick Sauber in real life. So yeah, we're hoping for a nice graphic to see next year. Not next year, next season. What am I on about? Anyway, it is now time to get into the grid. Let me know if you're all excited for this. Time to jump into season 12, F5. Of course, this season, all tiers are crossplay. So this is season 12, F5. So as you can see, this F5 tier is basically filled with I would say consider the ERO legends, the F4 and the F5 legends from the many previous years, including some new drivers as well who have signed up this season. So, uh, so starting off in the reserve drivers, we have the debutee of Fletcher Morris. He just he like I said, he's debuting this season. It'll be interesting to see what he can do, the British driver. Followed by then our top performing reserve driver from last season, which is Luis Saguero. I'm sorry, I've definitely said that wrong. Be prepared. I'm going to butcher a lot of these names, so be aware. But yeah, Luis was one of our top performing reserves. I think the top performing reserve in F5 last season, but cannot race full time. But it'll be good to see him racing whenever someone is not available. And also another debutee which has been put into F5, which is Scott Tuggle from the United States, another friend for Elliot Parker. Um, but yes, those are the three reserves which we have for this season. You may be thinking, why is there only 23 drivers? Well, F5's attendance is pretty much perfect. Most of the time, 18, 19, or 20 full-time drivers show up for these races, so we really saw no point of putting a mass amount of reserves into this tier when basically all full-time drivers are going to be showing up every single week. So we've thought about that and we thought, let's put the reserves into the other tiers and let's leave F5 as historic and as legendary as possible, I guess you could say in a way. So starting off in the Red Bull is the duo returning. Um, they used to they used to be together, but then one of them went to Steam, but now with crossplay, they are back together. It's definitely going to be interesting to see these two back together. So, first of all, we have Daniel Daniel Skrzydlak. I think I've said that right. I'm not entirely sure, but he was the champion in PSF4 last season, so he is here to basically defend his crown, defend the championship against basically the same drivers. But it was very, very even last season in F4, and it came down to the second last race where Daniel just managed to take the title from his rivals. And then his teammate is the US driver called Elliot Parker. Of course, Elliot has been in Aero for a very long time, same with Daniel. They used to both race together. Now they're back together with crossplay being enabled, which is always great to see. Then in the Mercedes, we have the dynamic duo of Stephen Prabhu versus, not versus, Stephen Prabhu and João Santos. I said that right properly this time. Um, those two aren't in the Ferrari this season. They are in Mercedes, which was basically because of the ERO donating thing. The two which are in the Ferrari, which we'll look at later, soon. Those two paid before Zhao and Stevie did, so they are in the Mercedes, which was their second choice car. And then in the Ferrari is the top one of the head admins here at ERO, which is Darius Mazzeri. Sorry, Darius, definitely said your last name wrong there. And Jack Bailey. Those two are in the Ferrari, were in Alfa Romeo last season, now in the Ferrari, take the step up, followed by him. Uh, Followed by them, sorry, is then in the McLaren we have Tim Lees and Esteban Fodder. Those two used to be teammates, I believe, in season 8 or season 9. Can't exactly remember what season, but those two are back together, which is very nice to see an old partnership also linking up again within this season. We then have another partnership linking up from last season, and that is Bastian Fries and Joseph Hearn. Joseph Hearn has now actually moved to Origin, so he is on Steam now. On PC, but with crossplay being enabled, those two are able to be teammates again. and they're back in F5 again. But rather than the Red Bull this time, they're in the Aston Martin. Then followed by them is again another dynamic duo, which is the Alpine, which is Suchel and Swistak. I'm sorry, Suchel and Swistak, I'm not going to try to pronounce your names because basically memes can be made and I don't want memes made. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Those two, of course, are always together, and especially in the Alpine. So it's always lovely to see them together. Followed by them is then another duo returning from last season, which is in the Haas, which we have the double Norwegian drivers together, which is William Ringsrud and Oliver Johansson. Those two pair back up together for another season. Both very good drivers from last season. Maybe we see one of them go for the championship this season. We'll have to wait and find out. Followed by them is then the Alfa Romeo, which sees the GOAT Nico Holtonen racing alongside Harry Brown. Just want to make sure it's Harry. Yeah, Harry Brown. Harry Brown was a reserve last season. He makes a step up to a full-time seat. Nico Holtonen racing again, maybe a few a few more points for Nico this season. We'll have to wait and see. Followed by that is then the Alpha Tauri, which sees the Mercedes driver from last season of Abdullah Ayman racing now alongside Alex Curtis. And lastly, in the Williams, we have Shade Maps, the also another great driver, an iconic driver in the Euro of Ali Hashmi, lining up alongside Manuel Quasada. Sorry, I've definitely said that wrong again. Anyway, I just want to see what people think of this grid because, of course, the people mainly typing in the chat are the people in F5. So, what do you all think? Because, of course, there's Apple, there's Elliot, there's Joe, there's Bastian, there's William. Right. So now we move on to the next tier. Oh yeah, Apple is asking, is this starting next weekend? Yes. ERO is starting next weekend, and it is going to be 12 weeks straight of racing. We were originally going to be having a break, but with F124's expected release time to be late May, early June, which is a lot earlier than before, than F123, sorry. We've had to basically move the schedule kind of forward, and it now means there's going to be no breaks at all. It's just going to be 12 straight weeks of racing. There isn't really many holidays. There's only really Easter, which it could be, drivers not making it. So anyway, let's move on to the next tier. The next tier is Season 12 F4. So Season 12 F4 is a very interesting grid as well. 24 drivers in this tier, one more added reserve to this grid. So we start off with the reserve drivers for F4. So we start off with Lewis Marion, who was in F3 last season, I believe. He is now in reserve. Basically, he got a season ban at the end of the season from penalty points, and he wished not to drive again full time. But it'll be nice to see him racing whenever he can. Followed by him is a returning driver. I believe it might be debut. I think it's debut of Rugvid Adavakar. Adavakar. I think I've said that right. Reigns is on Steam and he will be racing in F4 this season. Followed by him is then Carlson Sufjan. Carlson was teammates with Matthew Wrightson last season in F3, a very, very quick driver, but because of his availability, he can only race in F4 and only as a reserve as well. But it'll be good to have him racing whenever he's available. And lastly, and the last reserve is a guy called Dobrodarius. It's a very interesting last name. He is a Romanian driver on Steam, and we're pleased to have him debuting this season. So, starting off, we have the Red Bull, which of course you can see quite an iconic duo and quite an iconic name in Matthew Wrongson. Matthew is teaming up with Unaid Yassin. They two are together in the Red Bull. They were one of the pairs which donated to ERO, so they got priority to their seat in which they wished to race in the Red Bull. So those two are together in the Red Bull. There's not much else to say about that. Followed in the Mercedes is then we have Milos Socha. I never know how to say his last name, and a debutee of Luis Johnson. Uh, Johnson is a driver for ORT, or should I say Aspect, I think is the team they're merging with. Def probably got that wrong, I'd have to say. Um, but yeah, he is debuting this season. He was very quick in the sign-ups. He is, of course, a Steam driver, and yeah, we're happy to have Lewis on board. Hurricane WR is starting. Oh my goodness, is it? It's Sunday. You mean F1? You're not going to be watching F1, are you? Oh well, Artemis. Oh, yeah, that's it. Thank you, Lewis. Yeah, or T are now becoming Artemis. So Artemis Lewis. Then in the Ferrari, we have the duo of a returning driver, Alex Theodore, and then fifth seal, otherwise known as Filip Kaczerski. Hopefully, I've said that right. Probably not. Fifth seal was a top driver in F3 last season, around P11, P12 in the championship. He was a very consistent driver for whenever he raced, but it was just low points. But it'll be interesting to see what he can do amongst this grid. And like I said, Alex Theodore makes his return to ERO. Uh, Raced, I believe it was like 4, 5, or 6 seasons ago, and now he's back. So it's great to see Aero OG, I guess you could kind of say, returning back to the grid. Then in the McLaren, we have Enduro Zintos, otherwise known as Mikel Rasquin, followed by Bios, otherwise known as Lex Hod. Lex was another very consistent driver and a very good driver in PSF3 last season. He was teammates with Fifth Seal. It was quite a good pairing of them and Alfa Romeo last season in F3. Both very consistent drivers. It'll be interesting to see if maybe they fight it out on track for this season. And Mikel Rasquin, he raced not much last season, I believe. Didn't have the greatest of attendance, but he is now in F4 for this season. In the Aston Martin, we have Mark Sturnagel. Definitely said that wrong. I'm sorry, Mark. And followed by him is then another debut driver of Christopher Knowles. I want to say it's Knowles, but I don't think it is. His PSN is Vista. He is PS4, and he's from South Africa. So it's a very different nation joining us in the ERO, which is always nice to see. Then in the Alpine, we have two very good drivers in their own sense, and that is Callum Ogden, and the other one is Bjorn Rasmussen. So Callum Ogden was F5 last season, I believe, and Bjorn was a crossplay reserve last season. Um, so those two are able to race full time now, so they are in the Alpine together. Then in the Williams, we have two very, very good drivers together with Philip Keita, who was fighting for the PSF4 Championship last season. Alongside him is Snoo, otherwise known as Willie Magnussen. He's a driver from Sweden, is in my tier of PSGL, PSGL F9, I believe it is. And yeah, those two are in the Williams. It's a very good driver pairing. Could I definitely think they could go for the Constructors' Championship together. Followed by this duo as well, who I think could do really well together, and that is Toby Fennell and Ronan Clark, otherwise known as Ronanasaurus, sorry. The British and the Irish joined together. It'll be interesting to see how those two can do together in the AlphaTauri. Toby Fennell was also quite a top driver last season in PSF4. He now gets promoted up to F4 for the season. Then in the Alfa Romeo, we have a double steam pairing, and that is Dominic Skibor and Mohamed Faisen. Both of them were racing last season in crossplay. Didn't have the greatest of results, and that has led to them now being in F4 for the season. And lastly, in the Haas, we have Apple Topo, Rova Pepe, somewhat making a return. He stopped about halfway through the season last season. Basically, I would say one of the most popular ERO drivers in the whole of ERO, and alongside him will be Chris Pratt, who was around P13, P14 in PSF3 last season, having a few very good results, but then ended up DNFing quite a lot, kind of thing. So yeah, that is season 12 F4. Interesting to see what people are saying. How is Magnussen in a tier below me? Well, it was all to do with his availability, plus then also, what was it? It was his availability, plus then also the tiers are so stacked above. We were struggling to drop someone down a tier when it came to doing the grids. I feel like if there is one person who could get promoted near the start of the season, is Willie Magnussen. I know he's fast, so I could definitely see him getting promoted to F3. He could maybe even get into F2 because that man is fast. Anyway, that is F4 done. We now move to F3. And some people are asking, what are the race times? So F5 for this season is Friday, 6 p.m. UK. So basically staying at the same time. F4 is Friday, 7 p.m. UK. Could potentially get delayed to 7:10 or 7:15 p.m. like last season, so that F5 drivers can step into F4 if the numbers aren't there. We'll do a vote and see how that ends up going. But yeah, next we move on to season 12 F3. So I do have to say this tier is definitely a great tier indeed. There's quite a lot of people here who could be title contenders in their very own way and right, as there's some very, very fast drivers in this tier, 25 drivers in this tier, one extra reserve. Basically, you'll see it kind of go up, the numbers go up the further you go, kind of thing. You'll end up seeing that. So, starting off in the Red Bull, we have the returning driver of Mats Terhart. Mats, whenever he is raced, has been either F1 or F2, but for this season, he is in F3, and he's in the Red Bull, which I'm sure he will be happy about. And alongside him is the steam driver of Rankovic, or should I say, his full name, Andrea Rankovic, the Serbian driver. Those two line up together in the Red Bull. Followed by them is the Mercedes pairing, the pairing which paid to be in the seat and teammates together, could also potentially be commentators in other tiers for this season, and that is Lucas and Sparrow Maltby. Lucas, I'm sorry, I, I was gonna not say your last name, but I'm gonna try to say it. Safraniak. That would be my best guess on how you say your last name, and I'm sorry if I messed it up. But those two are pairing up for this season in F3. Both were very good drivers last season in PSF3. Lucas was a very good driver when it came to his pace, just maybe not as consistent compared to others. Whereas Sparrow Motorway kind of the same, following a similar line to that. Followed by them, we then look into the Ferrari seats, sorry, which is where Tibbs, Nico Matic can be found. The Tibbs, what team do you engineer for? I've completely forgotten. Tibbs is, I'd say, a relatively big name in the community. You know, most people should know who he is. He's an engineer for FBR. That's what it is. Sorry, Tib. I kind of forgot there. Um, yeah. Matic is in the Ferrari, and alongside him is a crossplay driver from last season called Vince Ventresca from Canada. He definitely shown his pace towards the end of the season, having some good results, and who knows what he can do this season in F3. Followed by them is then Yeast, Macaulay Beard in the McLaren, and alongside him is the returning driver of Sean de Goose. Probably said that wrong. I'm sorry. But yeah, those two are together in the McLaren. Yeast returned last season, around mid-season, first quarter of the season, and has definitely picked up the pace and could potentially challenge for the title in this tier because he is very, very fast. So we'll see what he can do. Then we have the returning driver from last season of Ozan Uyar in the Aston Martin, the Bird Tsunami, and alongside him is Rafael Mideros, otherwise known as Anmed74. Ozan was in PSF4 last season, but ended up getting banned about 3 to 4 races into last season by picking up too many penalty points. So it'll be the majority of them were on POV warnings, but we'll see what he can do this season on his return. He says he's got a lot cleaner, and it was only a season ban for season 11. He can now return. So yeah, we can see what he can do there. Followed by them is then the Alpine, where we see Callum Lyons and Darius Bodine line up together. Callum Lyons PSF3 last season, a few good results, a few bad results. We'll see what he can do this season. And Darius Bodine on Steam, otherwise known as KSK Snick. Also, a few good results, a few bad results. So maybe they work together. We'll have to wait and find out. Followed by them is then the Haas pairing, which is the returning Finnish driver of Mielberg, otherwise known as Tony Miles. Miles, I'm sorry, I don't know how to say that last name. Alongside him is the PSF2 driver from last season of Derry Phillips. Derry struggled to have a good race at all last season in the races which happened in PSF2, and with that, he has sort of been demoted in a way to F3 this season, but definitely could work his way back up to getting promoted in the middle of the season. We'll just have to see how his pace is. Followed by them is then the Alfa Romeo pain of Manuel Olami and Christian Libanov. Christian is a Steam driver. He was in crossplay last season. Some very good results for Christian. He was within the top 10 of the standings, I believe. So it'll be nice to see him racing again this season in quite a stacked grid. And alongside him is the PSF2 driver of Manuel Olami. He was PSF2 last season. He signed up uh, within the last 4 to 5 races of the season, and he did have some good races where he definitely did show his pace, but then would have incidents and overall just wasn't the greatest of seasons from last season. So he is now F3 for the season. In the AlphaTauri is the one and only Xbox driver in this tier, which is Anthony Siatkowski. Siatkowski. I'm sorry, I've definitely said that wrong as well again. And alongside him is the Steam driver of William Matthews. I would have to say William Matthews is probably one of the title contenders in this tier, just knowing the pace and consistency from his last season in the crossplay tier. So it'll definitely be interesting to see what he can do on track this season, alongside with Anthony, who is returning, having raced in season 10, I believe, was the last time he raced. He makes his return. And to just look at the reserves real quickly, we have the US driver of Rich Puentes, who makes his return to ERO. We have Rodrigo Ballesteros, otherwise known as Rodri BD, that's his PSN. He was in PSF3 last season, was a reserve, shown up every now and then for the races. Whenever he did, he got good results. So we might expect the same thing for this season. Followed by him is then a returnee of Paul Hill. Paul Hill is actually an old ERO champion. Paul Hill was, if you bear with me, when I find his name, Paul Hill was a ERO Season 7 champion. And that was on the only PC tier, I believe it was. So, yeah, he is making a return after, was it 4 seasons, which is incredible to see. So yeah, welcome back, Paul Hill, and welcome to F3. Followed by him is then another returnee and one of the ERO OGs, which is Tabaya Grimaldi, otherwise known as Javier Grim. Whenever he has returned, he has actually normally been towards the top end of ERO, at either F1 or F2. But for this season, he is in F3 because F1 and F2 are so stacked that he couldn't even get into a reserve seat in those tiers because they were that stacked. Plus, then also his availability meant F3 was better for him, and he might be able to make more races as a reserve in F3. And lastly, in and the last reserve is Samuel Newman. I think he debuted last season, but I'm not entirely sure. But definitely has shown his pace in the Euro, and it'll be interesting to see whenever he races. So it is now time that we move on to F2, and I do just have to give a little warning. F2 and F1 are so stacked. Basically, all champions and all top drivers from last season are basically in these last 2 tiers, and F1 is just incredible. You'll find out very soon. But F2, of course, F2 last season was line only restriction. For this season, F2 is any assists, and just saying, F3 Saturday 7 p.m. UK, and we're about to go into F2, which sees the latest race in a very long time in the Euro, which is F2 Saturday 8 p.m. UK. We haven't had an 8 p.m. race in quite a while in the Euro, but with everyone's availability being good at this time, um, that's what I was just saying about Lausanne. You're saying what time is F3? F3 is Saturday, 7 p.m. UK. We've tried our best to place drivers based on their attendance and what they put in the sign-ups. So anyway, without further ado, let's move on to Season 12 F2. So, just instantly looking, you can see quite a few familiar drivers and top drivers from last season. But then there is also quite a few debut drivers for this season, which is always lovely to see in the top tiers. So we start off in the reserves this time, where we start off with Elmer Abranovich. He raced last season in PSF 3, I believe, but he didn't do many races. But his sign up time this season was the third fastest amateur time, which is, of course, any assists up until ABS on, and then traction and whatnot on. Pro is it's pro and amateur is the categories for the season. With that being, pro is line only or no assists, and amateur is any assists. But yeah, Elmar, he wanted a full-time seat, but we couldn't squeeze him in because this grid is just so stacked. But he is prepared to challenge the full-time drivers for their seats if he is clearly performing better than the others. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not he can steal one of the full-time seats from the other drivers. Next, we then have Jacob Tucker, RT Jet, the steward of PSF4, who gets very annoyed every week whenever there is 15 to 20 reports to do. But yeah, Jacob makes a step up to F2 this season as a reserve. I'm sure he will be racing quite a bit. Next is Marco Botta. He actually was in F1 last season, but is no longer available for the time which F1 is, and is available for F2. So we thought it would be smart to just place him into F2. So Marco Botta is a reserve in F2, definitely will be racing, and yeah, he definitely will be fast. He will be up there with these drivers. Next is Joseph Burns, ORT Red Ninja, or should I say Artemis Red Ninja. Joseph Burns was in PSF2 last season. I would have to say not the greatest of results from what I can just exactly remember. Low points was normally where I ended up finishing, so it'll be interesting to see if he can pick up some better results for this season. Followed by him is then Malvin Allens. Malvin was on PS last season, but he has now made the switch to PC on Steam, and he has also made the step up to F2, clearly showing some great pace with his move to PC. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he can do on this grid. And lastly, in the reserve slots is Pierre Cocula. He done a few races last season. He joined quite late on in PSF2. Whenever he raced, he got good results. Can only reserve for this season, but let's hope to see him racing quite a few times in F2 this season. So now we move on to the full-time drivers. So we start off with the driver pairing, which were in Haas PSF3 last season and are now in Red Bull F2, and that is Paul Misiak, otherwise known as Mendelson, and Lucas Drajda. Sorry, I've definitely said those last names wrong, like always. Those two weapons last season together. They worked incredibly well together, and it's going to be interesting seeing them compete against some of the top line only drivers because, of course, with the assist restrictions now being removed for F2, we're seeing a few assist drivers get into the F2 tier, which is, of course, great to see because the majority of them, basically all of them who are in these high tiers, F2 and F3, run minimal assists. Normally ABS on and then traction off, manual gearboxing, corner line only. But yeah, those two are in the Red Bull together. Definitely will be great to see them together throughout the season. Could definitely challenge for a constructors title with good consistency. Followed by them is then the Mercedes, which we see the two new admins for the season join together to pair with each other in F2, and that is John Goring and Adam Bradshaw. Of course, those two are great friends, and I'm sure they'll be great together on the track. We have then a returning duo from PSF2 last season of Adam Hurtos and Marek Zhenko, Libnow and CPI Otapa. Return back to the grid. They are in the Ferrari this season, just like last season as well. So basically, stayed in the same tier for them, and yeah, they will definitely show some great pace this season. Then in the McLaren, we have The best Northern Ireland driver in the league, completely disputing myself, Jericho Balgos, alongside a debut driver of Daniel Smith. Daniel Smith is on Steam, of course, he is British, so we'll be able to communicate with Jericho Balgos. Jericho, of course, a great driver. Still yet to win a PSF2 championship. Um, Maybe this is the season for Jericho. We'll just have to wait and see. I feel like he definitely will be up there for the championship. And to be honest, personally, I hope he is. Because after finishing second, like 3 or 4 times, like he deserves one. You know, he he has to he has to get one eventually. Um, yeah, those turn together the McLaren. I'll be interested to see how they work together. If there's any team rules or whatnot. Then in the Aston Martin, we have a returning driver uh, in Robin De Jong, Xbox One, one of two Xbox drivers in this tier. Robin is in the Aston Martin alongside Otto Snoken, uh, also making a somewhat full-time driver return to ERO. Otto, a few seasons ago, was on PS, then made the switch to Steam, and has been performing well in other leagues, and now makes his full-time return to ERO. So it'll be great to see him competing with his friends on the grid like Jericho, Crystal, and Adam, and of course a few others as well. Then in the Alpine, we have another debut driver and our number one amateur driver, as in his times were the best out of all amateurs this season, and that is Artie Moreno, otherwise known as Arturo Moreno, and he is on Xbox Series S, so he is the other Xbox driver on the grid, the Mexican driver. It'll definitely be great to see how he does this season, and alongside him is going to be uh, Anatoly Maximyuk. I've definitely said that wrong, but he is our only Ukrainian driver in the league, um, and he has been whenever he raced in PSF2 last season, he had quite a few good results. So we'll have to wait and see what he can do on this grid. Then in the Haas is a returning driver and a debut driver, both on Steam. We start off with Tijman Vunciak. I think I've said that right. Probably got it wrong though. Tijman was in PSF3 last season. Only did one race in which he won and then retired, and has now came back this season, but is now on Steam, and he's also in F2. Very fast. It'll be cool and interesting to see him alongside these top line only drivers. Um, and yeah, who knows what he can do on this grid. And then alongside him is a debut driver, a debut Swedish driver on Steam called Albin Lindstrom. Albin had some very good pace in the sign-ups, was very close to being in a lower tier or reserve, but he manages to get a full-time seat in F2 this season, and it'll be nice to see him racing on track. Then followed by them is the Alfa Romeo duo, both on Steam. Uh, one driver returning from last season and another being a debut driver. We start off with Lord Percival, otherwise known as Gustav Schubert, who was fighting for the Crossplay Championship, the Crossplay title, in the last race. It was a three-man fight in the last race at Saudi Arabia last season. Gustav just fell short after basically leading the whole season, and he is now in F2 this season. Also made the switch to no assists, I believe. So who knows if he's going to be slower or better? We'll just have to wait and see on track. And then a debut driver for this season is Joel Antunes, the Portuguese driver on Steam. Has raced in other leagues before and has had some good results. So maybe he can do the same in ERO. We're just going to have to wait and find out with that. Then, in the AlphaTauri, We have the returning duo from PSF2 last season, again in the AlphaTauri, and that is David Clark and Rodwell Iniesta. Um, David Clark was fighting for the championship last season in PSF2. I think he will definitely be one of the title contenders for this season, but we're just going to have to wait and see what ends up happening, because who knows what's going to happen throughout the season. He might get promoted. Who knows? Um, and of course, Rodwell, IRT Rodwell, I should say, um, made the switch to no assists mid last season, and has definitely shown some great pace, as in PSGL F8 this season. And yeah, it'll definitely be good to see him racing again, also alongside David. I know those two are great friends, so good friendship driver pairing there. And lastly, in the Williams, we have a debut driver and another crossplay championship contender from last season. The debut driver is a driver called Cool31, the Spanish steam driver called Alex Navarro. He just recently joined ORT, which is of course now becoming Artemis. Very, very fast driver. His times were definitely great. Um, could have potentially been F1, but we thought F2 might suit him best. Uh, could also be a championship contender. We'll just have to wait and find out and see how his racing ends up going. And alongside him is Martin Rusnak, otherwise known as Fruity. He was also another crossplay title contender from last season. It was him, Gustav, and William Carlson, who we haven't saw yet, and maybe might be in F1. Just gonna have to wait a few more minutes. But yeah, Martin Rusnak was very consistent. Uh, believe he ended up finishing third in the championship, but he was there all season applying pressure to Gustav, and then of course just fell short to Carlson at the end of the season. But yeah, he will definitely perform well this season, and it'll be nice to see him racing a few of our best PS drivers. Okay, so I'm sorry everyone for taking so long, but here it is. This is it. Miha saying Cameron do GT7 too. Well, unfortunately, we don't actually have anything for GT7 yet. It was supposed to be getting revealed on the stream, but we are currently planning some special stuff, and the grids should be revealed very soon. Like, very, very soon. Like, hopefully within the next few days. Um, but yeah, there's nothing here right now for the GT7, unfortunately. Anyway, it's now time for F1. Uh, this Bash is saying, "Where's Ennis?" The man quit. So, of course you're joking, Bashy. I know you are. Um, but yeah, Ennis hasn't signed up, unfortunately. Would have been nice to see him race, but he's taking the step back from F1 until F1 24 comes out. Maybe even not does F1 24. Anyway, F1 time. This F1 tier is, and in my opinion, is the best tier Aero has ever seen. And that is simply because it is basically our top drivers from PS and Steam coming together. So this is it basically. Like, there's massive, massive esport drivers in this tier. Oh yeah, and also something to mention as well. We have no Aurelian this season. Aurelian Lepembu, our uh, back to back to back to back F1 champion. He has won the last 4 F1 championships. He misses his first ever season in ERO, because for those who don't know Aurelian, F7 or Aurelian, he started ERO season 1. He was here from the very beginning, and we've saw him work his way up through the rankings in F1. But he is not here for this season, which means we will see a new champion in F1. Aurelian hasn't signed up because he is studying abroad, is what I got told. He didn't retire, Matthew. He basically doesn't. He can't bring his setup with him. He's going abroad to study a course for a few months. And yeah, that means he can't race because he can't take his whole entire rig with him. Right. So F1 time. Let's just get straight into it. This is ERO F1 in season 12. So massive, massive names, and I said this might be the best tier ERO's seen, and it's no exaggeration because this tier is great. We have 29 drivers. A few drivers just signing up at the end, some today actually. So we've added them onto the graphic, and yeah, it is definitely a very good grid. So we start off with the reserves. We have uh, four debut drivers. 4 out of the 9 reserves are debut drivers for this season, and I'll actually just call those 4 out. So first of all, we had Rodriguez, Vitor Rodriguez, known as Kixby, on Steam. We then have Milan Lawrence, otherwise known as Fanthonius. His PSN's interesting. He is PS5. We then have Romain Foulon, F Massa W, the French Steam driver, and we then have Ross Smith, which is the Scottish PS5 driver. Those 4 drivers debuting in ERO, and they all get into F1. So great stuff from them. They all shown absolutely great pace in the sign-ups, and yeah, it'll be definitely interesting to see what they can do whenever they race, as quite a few of them said they can race full time. So who knows? They could take full time seats from these other drivers. We're just gonna have to wait and see. Anyway, let's start off with the Red Bull, in which we see an esports duo from L Plan Racing Team of Rafael Biler and Giovanni Kennis. Rafael Biler was our runner-up in the F1 Championship last season in season 11. He just missed. Oh wait, was he? Yeah, he was. Sorry, Rafael was our runner-up last season in season 11 F1. Can he take the championship this season? We're just gonna have to wait and find out. And then today, he just got an esports teammate, and that is Giovanni Kennis. Giovanni signs up for ERO and gets placed in F1 just off the bat. Um, those two will definitely work great together, and I'm very interested to see what they're going to do together because that is going to be a lethal duo together. Then, followed by them, is the Mercedes pairing. This was not a planned pairing at all, but somehow it's ended up happening, and it is this Polish duo of Sysmanzak, who makes his return to ERO, Aqua Sysmanzak, and IRT Frank, Franciszek Zizorna. I've definitely said that last name wrong again, Frank, and I'm sorry. But yeah, those two are together in the Mercedes. Those two, I'm sure, will definitely work great together. Sysmanzak was PSF2 in season 8 and season 9, I believe. But hasn't raced since, so it's nice to see him back racing, and he is now F1. So yeah, very nice from him indeed to get good times to get placed in the top tier. Then followed by them is a returning duo together from last season in PSF1. They make the step up from Alfa Romeo to Ferrari this season, and that is Kale Bulkinen and Vili Pyronen. Both ERO OGs, IRT Ken and Prime Vilzu. Vilzu is a 2-time F2 champion. Oh no, not 2-time, sorry. 3-time, I believe. 2-time or 3-time. I can't remember. I'm sorry. And of course, IRT Ken. Ken has been here for a very, very long time. And yeah, he will definitely do great things this season. This grid will definitely put him to the test. Same with Ilza. But yeah, those two, the Finnish duo, are back together again for another season, and it'll be great to see them working together. Then in the McLaren, we have two debut drivers, two completely new drivers to ERO, and that is Lewis Innes, the Scottish driver, and Zach Veermack, the South African driver. Uh, Lewis Innes, very young, a lot of potential. Definitely will be interesting to see what he can do on track. And Zach Veermack, some great times in the time trial sign-ups. And it now means the South African driver is going to be with us in F1 on his debut season. Followed by them, sorry, is then Panos Nicolaides, otherwise known as Pangri, one of the top 8 drivers from last season in F1. He ended up placing, if you bear with me, he got 5th place last season. Also, for information, Ken got 4th, Vilza got 6th last season. So they were both guaranteed seats because in ERO, the top 8 get guaranteed seats for next season. So those two were guaranteed seats. Same with Raphael. But yeah, Panos is then alongside Nassim Asnid, RCR Nassim. He was a reserve last season, I believe. Maybe a full-time driver. Can't exactly remember. But he is now in the Aston Martin for this season. Then we have a returning driver and a new driver in the Alpine. And this duo here is going to be dangerous on track. There's so many dangerous duos in this tier, and it's definitely going to be very interesting to see. And that is Harry Nuns, NLR Harry Nuns, and the FVR owner and founder Carlos Torres. Um, yeah, FVR and NLR, like two of the big esport teams, probably two of the biggest up there. And those two are pairing it together in the Alpine. Both Steam drivers will definitely be interesting to see what they can do. Harry says he's going for the championship, so who knows what's going to happen there? Because of course this grid is stacked, and it is top 3 rewards this season in F1 as well. So he might try get one of the rewards. We're just gonna have to wait and see with that. Followed by them, we then go to the Haas pairing, which is a double UK pairing, and that is Harrison Holmes, who makes his return to ERO and also his return to league racing, and then a surprise return from GRS owner Luke Mills. Look, I'm sorry if you're here, but I'd have to say that you are like probably our rival league in a way, and then you're here this season in ERO. Of course, he just recently joined Top Tier Motorsport (TTM), and has had some very very good results already with them. A P20 to P1 in PSGL, I think there was for Luke. So yeah, will definitely be interesting to see him back in ERO. He's on Steam, and Harrison Holmes, making his return to league racing, just signed for CPI as well. So congrats to Harrison on that. He says ERO is his priority league, and with this grid, it's going to be very interesting to see what he can do there. Next, this duo. Oh my goodness. I think this duo could potentially win Drivers and Constructors Championship. We're just going to have to wait and see. We have Enzo Tabani, F7R Flopman, and Dirk Vermont, TF10 Dirk. Two of the top PS drivers on the whole of F1. Flopman being the young prodigy he is, I believe 14 years old in PSGL PSF1, and then Dirk in PSGL PSF2. Yeah, these grids are incredible. These guys are incredible. Enzo making his return into ERO this season. Dirk Vermond making his debut this season. I have kept in close contact with him to try draw him in, and it's nice to see him signed up for this season. Then in the AlphaTauri, we have a debut driver and also a champion. The debut driver is Unai Vega, the Spanish driver on Steam. His grinded time trial this season wanted to try be number one, fell short to Harry Nuns, who ended up having the number one time trial times overall in the ERO. But yeah, will definitely be interesting to see what Unai can do this season. And alongside him is our crossplay champion from last season, which is William Carlson, ATX Carlson, I should say. Incredible pace. He won in PSF1, the one race at Bahrain, which we had crossplay turned on. He was one of 3 PC drivers who were racing, and he ended up winning, beating the likes of Aurelian. So his pace is definitely there, and it'll be interesting to see whether or not he can do a repeat from last season. Won the crossplay last season. Can he win F1 this season? We're gonna have to wait and find out. And then the last pairing is two more TF10 drivers. We have 3 in total. We have Dirk and then these two together, and that is David Fernandez, our 3rd place finisher last season in ERO F1, and then the returning driver of Enzo Sabaton. Enzo has raced in ERO for many previous seasons, but hasn't raced as of since, but now makes his return this season, and he is paired up with his TF10 teammate, David Fernandez. David, like I said, was P3 last season in the was P3 in F1 last season. Some very, very good results from him. He will definitely be up there in this grid. I'm just realised I didn't completely finish the reserves. I mentioned the new reserves, but I didn't mention the returning reserves. So, first of all, we have Cohen Mesman, IRT Cohen, the another great young driver who's just recently made the switch to no assist, and he is a reserve for F1 this season. For those asking as well, F1 this season is Sunday, 7 p.m. UK. F1 for the last 4 to 5 seasons has been Sunday, 6 p.m. UK. But with attendance, we make it an hour earlier, and it is now 7 p.m. UK for the F1 starting time. And I mean, the grid is better than ever with this time, so it might stay as this for future seasons. Just wait and see. But yeah, Cohen is a reserve in F1. He was F2 last season, so he makes a step up. We then have Clement Zeffron, otherwise known as Clem. He was PSF2 last season, but his pace was so incredible that whenever he done ERO races, for fun, he attempted last to firsts. He just didn't do qualifying, and he just raced through the grid. And in some cases in F2, he ended up winning races starting at the back of the grid. This man is crazy. He's online only. He is practicing no assists. And yeah, he will definitely be a great driver to watch out for whenever he does decide to race this season. Then we have Ace Luno Ludwig Stahlberg. He has been in ERO for quite a few seasons as well. Has always been full time, but unfortunately now makes a step down to reserve as he can't exactly confirm his attendance constantly in ERO. But it's always nice to see loyal drivers in a way still sign up, even if they're not sure they can race constantly. And last, and then an icon in ERO, I guess you could say, the man who just didn't race last season at all, and that is Brendan Gashi, otherwise known as Bashi, the Albanian driver. Like I said, he signed up for last season. Did he race? No. Because that's what Bashi loves to do. And Bashi, if you're in the chat, you know you love to do that. But yeah, Bashi is one of the reserves for this season. He'll definitely do great things if he decides to race. And last but not least, we have Alex Sapkota, STR Noise, the Nepal driver. He was our PSF2 champion last season. He was originally going to be full time for this season, but with him being PS4 and complaining about crossplay, he's now actually requested to be a reserve, as he's not entirely sure with crossplay if he wants to race. So he is now a reserve. But yeah, our PSF2 champion is an F1. He makes a step up, and yeah, he will definitely do great things for this season. So that is us done with the grid reveal. So thank you to everyone. Thank you to those who are still currently watching, because I have saw the numbers have went slightly down when we've spent long. I have spent an hour and 15 minutes. Lovely. But yeah, season 12 is going to be a mega for Euro. I'm very excited. Having got the €1,000 prize pool and then the Euro donator program going, we are making the correct steps, and Euro is only going to go up from here. I can guarantee that. Um, our prizes for this season, we don't have any cash available yet. I will say yet, because future seasons we're hoping to make that change. With the Euro Donator program, which is going on, look out towards the end of the season. We're potentially planning a giveaway for an F124 copy, which anyone can enter. So definitely be on the lookout for that near the end of the season. Probably about mid-May, I would say, is around the time which you'll see that. But yeah, that is all from us. Thank you very much for tuning in to the Grid Reveal stream. And next week, we start with F5 on Friday, 6 p.m. UK. So don't miss out on next week's race. Next week's race, we're beginning at Bahrain, so might have some very good racing going on there. But yeah, that is all. Thank you everyone very much for watching today's stream and grid reveal. And yeah, we will see you. I mean, you'll see me like this next season. Of course, I'm in the Discord. Don't feel free. Don't feel scared to DM me. Feel free to DM me. Uh, I will accept and message everyone. I don't have closed DMs. Um, and yeah, feel free to ask any questions which you have about team, cars, times of races, anything like that. But yeah, thank you everyone, and we will see you next week for Bahrain. Keep a lookout on Instagram, or not Instagram, social media platforms as well. Euro's going to be big on social media this season, because I'm doing graphics, and that means posts are happening, like race week, winners, standings. So watch out on Twitter-X, because we're going to be active there, and I'm going to make sure that happens, because I'm doing the graphics. Alright, thank you everyone. We'll see you next week for Bahrain Season 11, Round 1 of Euro. Thanks.